Alright, so in a previous video we made a fading LED, but you can see it's a pretty dodgy fading LED, and two, our code is really repetitive. And you're probably looking at it and you're thinking, man, a loop would be great here. And I agree. So let's get rid of all that ugly coding here. I'm also going to get rid of this bit where I turn the LED on before the actual code starts. And I'm going to use something really fancy called a for loop. Okay, now a for loop does two things. It loops back on itself over and over and over again, but it also, every time it loops, it checks to see if it should continue looping or if it should stop looping. And it also changes the value of a variable throughout it. So it does a couple of things, but I'll explain it while I'm doing it. So here's our for loop, FOR. Now, the first thing we need to do with our for loop is create a variable. Now, that variable might just be x. So initialize x, and we need to say what our variable x is going to be equal to. Now, x in the middle of this for loop is going to refer to the value of our LED. Okay, so our LED is going to be 225 to start with. That's the highest amount. And it's going to go down and down and down and fade out and fade out. So I'm going to set my initial variable x at 225, semicolon. So that's the first part of my for loop. There's three parts to the for loop. The next part is the condition. And the condition says keep doing this as long as this condition is true. And I want my LED to keep fading out until the LED has a value very close to 0. Okay, so I'm going to say keep repeating this for loop until x is keep repeating this for loop as long as x is greater than 5. So the condition actually, every time it checks the condition and it says, is the condition still true? And if the condition is still true, the for loop will continue happening. So if x is greater than 5, so if x is 20, the for loop will happen again. Now, the last bit here is where we change our x value each time the for loop rolls through. Now, we can change our x value by anything that we want, but the most common thing is just to decrease the x value by 1. So we have a shorthand way to do that. We can do x minus minus. And those two minuses mean decrease the x variable by 1. You can also increase the x value by 1. Alright, so I'm going to decrease the x value by 1. Alright, now we need to say what's going to happen inside our for loop. So I open up a curly bracket. And the only thing I want to do inside my for loop is an analog write. If I can spell it right. Analog write. Y. Oh, no capital at the front. If it's not changing color and you think it should, it's probably a spelling error. Analog write. Now, analog write green. Whoops. Analog write green. And we want to write whatever our x value is to the green. Alright. So here's our for loop creation. Oops, make sure you add comments in there. For loop says keep looping as long as x is greater than 5. Okay, I've just been really descriptive here. Set the LED to whatever the x value is. Alright, so if I upload this now, I should have a fading LED. So reminder, this is what my fading LED looks like at the moment. Boop, 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 boop. Let's see what it looks like when I'm done here. Okay, just going to upload that. Okay, so what I'm getting, now you guys probably can't see that, but it's flickering. It's flickering really fast, but it's not getting any dimmer. Now, my there was nothing wrong with my code, no orange signals, which is amazing for me. My gut instinct tells me that my computer is struggling to keep my Arduino is struggling to keep up with what's happening here. This for loop's happening too fast, and it's not having enough time to do the decrement of the x, to decrease the x by stuff. So I'm just going to put a small delay in here, just by let's say 50. Delay for loop. That's what I reckon, but we'll see. Okay, we have a fading LED. It's not really what I wanted though. It just seems to be fading too slow. So I'm going to see if I can get away with like a super fast delay here, just 5 milliseconds. Alright, this is more like it. You can see it's fading out here, but I really think that I've probably still set my cutoff too low. So I'll just set it to x is greater than 1 here, and I'll just try this one more time. So I had a little play with my numbers. I set it up so that x is greater than 0 and it'll happen, and I added the delay just a little bit. You can see that I got my fading LED. I think that that's pretty much what I want it to look like. The only other thing I might add to this code is just an extra delay outside of the for loop, because this for loop happens and then it happens again and then it happens again. But if I put a delay of say let's say half a second outside of it, that'll emphasize the moment when the light turns off, which I think Alright, so let's try that one. I'm just going to upload that. Alright, this is better. Okay, so there's our fading LED using a for loop. If you wanted to, you could create a second for loop underneath that one, which made the LED fade back up again by doing some of this stuff in reverse. X equals 0, x is less than 225, x plus plus, and you could get it fading upwards, downwards, and upwards and downwards. Alright, that's a for loop. A for loop is a really, really important tool when it comes to programming.